Thank you very much for this introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good day to all of you. On a day like this, another December 16th of 1773, a group of citizens from Boston, the Sons of Liberty, decided to resist oppression and not surrender the precious gift of freedom, not even faced with force of arms. Thus began a wonderful journey for this country, a journey with a single destination and with the best ideals to guide this journey, the ideals of justice, individual autonomy, and equal opportunity. These ideals, universal ideals, which have inspired the giant steps taken by humankind, and which also inspired the first American revolutionaries. And these ideals were the pillars upon which this nation was developed. These are ideals that are part of the heritage of mankind because they constitute the very moral fabric of democracy. I thank you very much for granting me this opportunity to address some words to you on such a memorable day. A day that shows us with so much clarity that if today we are free countries, it is because of those who dared to think of it, those who dared dream it, and those who wanted to make their dreams come true. It shows that if today we live in advanced countries, it is because we continue to look back towards that constellation of values, the values of justice, equality, and freedom that have always pointed the way towards social progress and a more perfect democracy, especially at times of anxiety and uncertainty. Ladies and gentlemen, President Kennedy said that in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this same earth, this same planet. We all breathe the same air. Indeed, we all share the vulnerability of this, our little planet. Today, some of the fears of the Cold War are a thing of the past, those that inspired those words by President Kennedy. However, we all feel, we all know, that we are united by the destiny of a planet that today is even more vulnerable than ever. Vulnerable to climate change, vulnerable to poverty and its corollaries of resentment and violence, vulnerable to terror and the wrongs of intolerance. Vulnerable, such as we can see this in recent days, to economic error, to economic irresponsibility, which affect us all on a global scale. And it is in these times of upheaval that we should bear in mind that today, as it was 3 centuries ago, it has always been the values of justice, equality, and responsibility that continue to be the best forces for change and the safest principles to follow. Someone said once that the problems of democracy can be solved by more democracy. And today, in this global village that we inhabit, to consolidate these values that unite us, and to reaffirm us, means that we have to go beyond and spread them, expand them. And in order to be effective in the face of the challenges that affect us globally, we have to be able to articulate a response on the same scale. We have to be able to strengthen and spread the practices of good governance and responsibility on a global level. This is the challenge that we face as we begin this 21st century. We are faced with the challenge of building a system of global governance, and this is what our times demand. In recent times, in recent months, we've all been taken by surprise by a change in the international economic situation, a situation that barely a year ago was unforeseeable, unthinkable. It was unforeseeable because of how hard the fall was and how vertiginously it all happened. In barely a few weeks, the entire planet has been shook up by financial upheaval that have had an almost immediate impact on the real economy. I believe that I'm not mistaken when I say that we're witnessing the first economic crisis of the global era. A crisis that is global both because of its scope and its planetary scale, but also global because of the response that we are offering to it. For the first time in history, all of mankind has joined to respond to a common challenge. And I believe that we all agree on the need to undertake a coordinated effort on a worldwide scale of the functional mechanisms of the international economic system. At summits such as the one held in Washington, but also at the different meetings and through the agreements adopted within the framework of the European Union, during the recent meetings that both the EU and the United States have held in countries from the Asia-Pacific region, during the Spanish and Latin American summit, practically during all of the major international meetings and events held in different regions and areas all over the planet, we have been discussing the mechanisms, the way and means of how to undertake this reform. And nobody doubts this need any longer. And no one doubts either that any solution will involve political and social cooperation. Any solution will have to imply spreading and expanding the practice of good governance. It will require establishing mechanisms of economic responsibility, which will be the necessary underpinning to guarantee and support international financial and economic stability. Any solution will have to create this real, effective, and global economic governance to which I referred before. And I believe that in this context, the international community has shown a remarkable capacity to respond. We have taken concerted measures that will enable the financial system to deal with the impact on real economy, on people's quality of life. Let me tell you that the government of Spain has been an active and effective actor in this process. We reacted immediately to the first signs of economic trouble by coming to the aid of families and businesses. Moreover, we launched measures to support the financial system and to guarantee citizen savings. Few can doubt that this is the path to follow. And it is these few who doubt, the ones that see in these measures a certain throwback to the old recipes of statism. However, I believe that this is a mistake in appreciation, because these initiatives that we are adopting, there is no nostalgia whatsoever. There is no desire to go back to an all-encompassing state that history has proven to be both unfair and inefficient. Today, we all know that the breadth and the size of a bureaucracy does not show a state's strength, but what it shows is its weakness if it's too large. Today, we all know that political effectiveness does not lie in encompassing an ever wider social space, but in leveraging and guaranteeing cohesion and equality that will make free development of this space possible. far from putting the free market economy in danger, we want to promote its stability. And therefore, we want it to become more predictable, more efficient, more secure, and fairer. Faced with selfish protectionism, we want to promote exchanges on equal footing, on an equal playing field. Faced with barriers, we want to build bridges. We want to cooperate to grow together, to grow more and in a more just and fairer way. Faced with models situated on extremes, we want a free economic and political system, but one that is committed to stability and well-being. Both the models of a ubiquitous state and those of an uncontrolled market have shown to be incapable to stand up to reality. They have proven to be inefficient from an economic point of view and unjust from a social point of view. We are headed towards the establishment of clear and efficient rules and guarantees. We're headed towards mechanisms of responsibility, also at an international level, so that the market may develop its potential without breaching the principles of justice, stability, and equality. This has always been the position held by the government of Spain, and it is a position firmly based on the principles of multilateralism, cooperation, and global responsibility. And I believe that such as we can see in the decisions made at the recent summit of the heads of state and of government of the EU, as well as the roadmap drafted at the Washington summit and the measures that are being worked out and agreed on all around the world, I believe that this is the way we are headed, that this is the position we're all moving towards. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to be able to understand our world, we all tend to refer to different social settings as if they were separate entities. Thus, we talk about the economic sphere, we speak about a political environment, or about the social arena. This is a useful conceptual tool that allows us to understand reality, but we all know that this real world doesn't work that way. Just as numerous elements within a person's life, their profession or occupation, their ideology, beliefs, feelings, their dreams, their fears, come together within one single person to create its personality. In the same manner, the lives of our countries, and in that of the globalized world itself, the political, the economic, and the social spheres cross paths and constantly interact in order to form and create each individual society. It is no longer possible to maintain that politics should be limited to the functions of a gendarme state without acting in the economic and social arenas. It is no longer possible to sit on the sidelines as the major world events unfold. It is no longer possible to take refuge in isolationism or protectionism. All these possibilities have been discredited and have been refuted by reality. Therefore, the measures of economic governance that we are adopting are necessary. They are essential in order to move towards stabilizing the international economic situation and to be able to overcome the impasse in which we find ourselves. However, for them to be effective, we have to be ambitious, more ambitious, and we have to establish effective mechanisms for economic governance. No doubt about that. But, and this is, we also need to take decisive steps towards a global political and social governance which is the second pillar upon which we should build our future. This second pillar, that just as it has been shown in recent years, can only be built on multilateralism if it is to last. If there's anything we have learned from recent history, it is that it is dangerously naive to stay on the sidelines as the great currents affect the world, flow by, but in the same way, it is dangerously naive to aim to govern globality alone. We live in a world that is increasingly bound together by economic, cultural, scientific, and commercial ties. It is a world in which, alongside the national states, other global actors have emerged, and they claim their own space, and justifiably so. Social groups, NGOs, multinational corporations, labor unions, associations of all sorts, transnational associations, and amongst all of them, an incipient but real and increasingly demanding global civic consciousness and awareness. It is a world that only speaks, understands, and accepts the language of multilateralism, of cooperation, and co-responsibility. The time has come to rebuild bridges, to promote multilateral mechanisms and international institutions. We have the duty, the obligation to improve and take advantage of their effectiveness and recognize these new actors' demands for space. This is the only way that will get us closer to attaining political stability, economic development, and equality. It is undoubtedly the way that will lead us to social progress. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all aware of my progressive political affiliation. But I'm not speaking from a standpoint of passion, but from one of analysis, when I say that I'm convinced that it is from these progressive democratic points of view and positions that it has been made possible to move towards the political, economic, and social practices required in today's world. It is from these positions that most work has been done to make the principle of social responsibility a reality. And it is from a progressive democratic stand that the need to ensure economic stability, equality, and social justice has always been defended as being the best way towards political, economic, and social progress. And it is from a progressive democratic stand that we have understood the state to be a facilitator and a guarantor of peace, stability, and social justice. A role that is far removed from totalitarian paternalism and social indifference. Today, we can see clearly that almost all countries are adopting anti-cyclical policies, which without a doubt and without fearing to make a mistake, we could call them progressive. Such policies are aimed at establishing mechanisms for economic supervision, for guarantees in economic predictability, and for social stability. And in this regard, the change of course visible in some media and political leaders has been a response to the reality of the crisis, to a situation that has been dramatic, harsh, and astounding. Almost overnight, the vast majority of economic analysts and thinkers, as well as many politicians, who just a few months ago unwaveringly championed neoconservative orthodoxy, they defended it without any hesitance or obstacles, have begun to demand, some even with the zeal of a convert's faith, formulas by which the state can guarantee, supervise, and regulate the effective functioning of a market that has clearly shown a reality that only ideological blinkers were able to hide for a certain time. Indeed, we are living in a time of changes that undoubtedly will leave their mark in history books. And as with every beginning, there is something that we will be leaving behind. Last November 4th, we were witness to the fact of how the citizens of the United States, with impressive and overwhelming clarity, expressed their wish to uphold the values that guided the birth of this nation. It was said by President-elect Obama on the very night of the elections. The United States is called upon to be a country admired and respected in the world, not for its army, its power, or its wealth, but for the values proclaimed by its founding fathers. To be a land of opportunity, a land of freedom, and a land of equality and equity. Thus, a new chapter in this country's politics opens. A chapter that, beyond a doubt, will better address the needs of societies and of the world in which we live, and one in which closer attention will be paid to social responsibility in domestic matters and also to a policy of dialogue on foreign issues. This is the space of multilateralism, of peace and dialogue, and it is by no means incompatible with firmness or decisiveness. It is a space from which our citizens see us from the moment they place their confidence, their trust in us. This is where our citizens see us, the government of Spain. It is a Spain where, without any doubt, we shall all come together. Therefore, my country will maintain its commitment to the organizations and initiatives that contribute to strengthening this essential pillar of international governance, and particularly ties with the United Nations, an organization which is called upon to be one of the leading protagonists of the new era that we're entering. From our history and our tradition, through our cultural and social ties that link us to Europe, to the vibrant and dynamic region of Latin America, and increasingly also to Africa, because of the reality as being the 8th largest economic power in the world and 3rd largest in terms of global investment, Spain has a role to play in configuring this new world, and we shall respond accordingly. I can assure you of that. We're already doing it, and we'll keep doing it in fulfilling this responsibility. Within a year, we shall assume the presidency of the European Union, and we shall prove ourselves capable of combining all these resources and ties that link us to different parts of the world, and combine them with the power of the Union in order to help bring about the world that is more responsible, more stable, more equitable and fair, and more humane. And will strive to reinforce the Union's mechanisms in order to prevent the reoccurrence of problems that we are currently facing. And will contribute to the steps that are being taken towards establishing a system of global governance. Ladies and gentlemen, when the ancient Greeks used the word crisis, it was used to refer to a moment of change. but the term also implied judgment, reflection, and choice. These are ambitious goals, the ones that I'm setting before you. But at this moment, the situation is open-ended, undefined, and it is up to us, it is in our hands, and it is up to us to choose between alternatives that we're facing, to reflect upon today's reality, and to choose the destiny and the destination that we wish to move towards. Notwithstanding, I do not believe that anyone in this country, and at this moment that we're celebrating, anybody could accuse me of airy idealism, because it was here in this great nation where someone said that when you find yourself in a stormy world, we search for a pilot to guide the vessel on which we're all embarked, and that during those moments we should always follow the course of peace, security, and freedom. And this person's name was Thomas Jefferson. And his words, those principles, are part of the ideals that we should never abandon. Thank you very much.
Of the Bretton Woods system, because I think what the global economy needs right now is to look at what has happened and analyze it, looking at those rules that had been established in the Bretton Woods system in order to adopt those rules, which we didn't have in the past, but which we obviously need. And so I think we do need to move towards establishing some kind of new financial and economic system, which will guarantee greater transparency with more supervision and better controls, whilst guaranteeing, of course, transparency and being exercised by organizations that will prevent the current crisis from occurring again. We're in a very regrettable situation right now, which was very highly unexpected, because obviously the controls and the systems that were in place failed to work, and there was not enough transparency. And so these are all things that we need to correct, and we need to come together so that we can adopt common rules at an international level in a joint concerted effort. Well, I think that the responsibility is definitely a shared global responsibility. Obviously, when we experience times like those we're experiencing right now, those countries which have fewer resources and those social sectors that are most vulnerable will suffer the consequences of the crisis that much more. And so I think that those countries that have more resources cannot, in times of difficulties, no matter what our own troubles might be, stop to help those countries who have fewer resources and who have fewer opportunities, not to receive the minimum support that they need in order to move forward. It's a question of ethics, global ethics, and it's a question of social responsibility. And the government that I belong to, the government of Spain, has publicly stated precisely in these difficult times that we will maintain our level of commitment and cooperation for development. The recession or the crisis that we're currently experiencing will not affect, will not reduce any of the social policies or the international cooperation funds that we have established, because we feel that this is precisely the time when a decided, firm response is needed through cooperation for those who are hardest hit by the international crisis. And we have done so in our development aid, and we're doing it also in the current problems with food security. And we've made a huge contribution to the International Food Security Fund, and there's going to be a summit on food security in Spain next January. an international summit, and I think that's the position that we all need to uphold. Our commitment, the commitment of the government that I represent, is in this term of government to invest 0.7% of our GDP in development aid. We're up to 0.5% already in just 4 years, and in these times of crisis and difficulties, we will not stint our efforts to continue making progress in those funds, and nor will we cut any of the funding for our own social policies internally, so that in our own country we can support those people that are being hardest hit because they lack resources, because they've lost their jobs, households that have more difficulties to pay their mortgages because of the crisis. We will also be supporting them, and we will not be cutting any of our social spending. I hope that the budgets that we will be approving this week in Parliament is a state budget which has two clear priorities. One, which is to invest in public infrastructures so we can create jobs, to invest in research so we can build a more productive, innovative economy, and to invest in social policies, support to families, to pensioners, to the unemployed, and to the most vulnerable in our society, and of course to maintain the same level of development aid. The search for transparency, if we disseminate and establish levels of accountability at a global level, if we have accountability at a global level, those governments which do not operate transparently, which are not democratic in their practices, and who do not transparently reflect how their citizens' resources are being managed. If there is global accountability from international organizations, or if everybody is clearly visible to everyone else in this planet, that will necessarily have a positive impact, because they will be under pressure from their own public, but also under pressure from international organizations, and so they will have to adopt more proper policies and more proper practices. And introduce more transparency and more good or better governance. Obviously, sometimes I've said that globalization has meant that the economy travels in real time everywhere, and there's that knock-on effect everywhere. Information flows in real time too. But what we need to globalize now, and what we need to flow in real time, are values. And I think that that's the great challenge right now, and what we need to do is to take advantage of this crisis so that we can truly globalize values and good practices, the values of justice and good governance and solidarity, because in a global transparent world, it would make sense for that to flow in real time, as does everything else in the economy, and as those toxic investment products have flown. Let's hope that now a more positive flow will develop.